DreAllDay.com. You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. What is that? That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unified philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is why Instagram ass models exist. Yes, we're going to talk about it. You already know they exist. Don't pretend that you don't. We're going to talk about why they exist, because there is a why behind it, and you need to understand it. Before we get into this, I remind you of two things. First of all, my text message number is down below in the description to this episode. Once we start sending those messages out again, you'll be learning more about that and hearing me talk about it. Secondly, workonyourgameuniversity.com. You want to have me as your direct coach who can help you work through, implement, and start using all the things you hear me talking about here on this show, whether that be for your business life, your professional life, your personal life, your relationship life, or any skill that you see me demonstrate here. I can teach these to you because this is my specialty, is my ability to take things that I know how to do, explain them, break them down, and make them systematic for other people. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. You can learn more about working with me and take the next step right there. Just click the button right there on that page. Again, that's workonyourgameuniversity.com. That link also down below in the description to this episode. So this one doesn't need a ton of background, this episode itself. Actually, the first time I heard somebody actually use this phrase, it was a female who I was having a conversation with, and she is not an Instagram ass model. I do know some females who are Instagram ass models, but this one was not. And one of the things that she said, I can't remember the entire context of the conversation, but one of the things that she was kind of lamenting and talking down on was, well, Dre, you see all these Instagram ass models out here doing A, B, C, whatever it was that she was saying. And the way she was saying it was as if she was trying to get me to kind of commiserate with her and agree with her. And I said, wait a minute. You are talking to a heterosexual man. I'm not going to denigrate Instagram ass models. There is a role that they play in the society, the same way you might not like bumblebees, but there's a role that they play in society. All right, they play a role in society. You all know what they are. You've either seen them, you've had your time sucked away looking at them, man, I'm looking at you, or you're one of them. All right, so you're one of the three. You either know who they are, you had your time taken away by one of them, or you are one of them. And everybody's in one of these three categories. So let's get into the points, and everything will be within the material. I don't need to give too much background on this one. First thing you need to understand is that Instagram ass models are not in existence just to get likes, engagement, and attention. All right, there's more to the game than likes, engagement, and attention. Game is a whole lot bigger than that. I want all of you to understand it. I've had men and women, as I just explained in my introduction, lament to me about these ass models on social media and how these women may lack substance, how they're just looking for attention, or they are otherwise distracting, or some other negative thing that people are seeing in the situation. This women putting their ass out there is distracting me from doing my work. I find myself cruising on social media rather than actually working. 30 minutes get taken away and I didn't even realize that it was happening. If you're a man, let me help you all out, all of you men who are listening to this. If you are a man and you're finding yourself having your time taken away by Instagram ass models, I understand your position. All right. The solution to this is stop looking at the Explore tab on your social media, whatever social media platform you happen to be using. Stop looking at the Explore tab, because the Explore tab is where you're seeing ass models. Now, if you're seeing them in places other than the Explore tab, that means you're actually following some Instagram ass models. I suggest you stop following them, and they're going to pop up on your feed anyway, one way or another. If you ever go to the Explore, you ever want to find them again, to go to the Explore tab, they'll be right there with their asses out. They're not going to disappear if you stop following them. So stop following them if you're a man doing that. Okay. If you are a woman, the solution to this issue, if you consider it to be one, is to continue being a woman of substance. If you are indeed a woman of substance, I talked about how to be a person of substance. Let me give you that episode. That was episode number 2183. I told you that substance is self-evident. And I told you how to be a person of substance back in episode number 1286. So if you are a person of substance, keep being a person of substance. There will be value to it always, in different places and to different people. All right, and we got to understand the context here. And the men who want and value substance will come find you. If you're a woman of substance, do not try to compete with the Instagram ass models. You either got to be one or you won't be one. Decide what side you want to be on. This is a clear binary. What side of the game you want to be on, if you want to be an Instagram ass model or not. But this is the solution for any of you who finds it to be a problem. Okay, so that's the first point here. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is why Instagram ass models exist. Number 2, when I was a child, I grew up in the 80s and into the 90s. When I was a child, men were adored and respected by their wives, even though they worked average jobs, made average salaries, and they made enough and did enough to take care of the home situation. That was the woman's expectation. Have a job, make some money, be able to take care of most everyday things that happen at home, right? Pay the electric bill, pay the light bill, et cetera, et cetera. That was the female expectation of a man. And most females were not looking for anything more than that. And again, I'm talking 80s going into the 90s. That was the general expectation, at least as far as what I could tell as a child. Now, while there were exceptions to this, of course, there are still women who conduct themselves by these standards to this day. And there are women who still conduct themselves by these standards to this day. There are some things that have changed. That's what I want to talk about. The internet, and specifically the Instagram ass models that I'm talking about here today, has created the internet and the prevalence of, not even prevalence, but the advent of the Instagram ass model / OnlyFans model, because a lot of Instagram ass models are just using Instagram as a lead magnet to bring people into their OnlyFans pages. It's created this new wave of females who are looking for something completely different than what your parents might have been looking for back in the day, what your mothers were looking for back in the day when it came to your husbands. And there is another wave of men who are willing to give it to them. So there's not just the women, it's also the men. Men have changed their expectation and women have changed their expectation. And I'm not saying all men and all women. Of course, there are exceptions. There are people out there who still abide by the traditional rules. I'm talking about certain segments of the population. And these women that I'm talking about, the Instagram ass models, you know what they used to be known as back in the days? They used to be called trophy wives. A woman who's an Instagram ass model today would have been a trophy wife 30 years ago. All right, that's what she would have been, a trophy wife. A trophy wife was an attractive woman who may not have much substance to her and may not offer much between the ears, so to speak, but she looked really good on the arm of a man, and the man was willing to financially invest in some way, shape, or form into this woman and to invest in keeping her around. And this was a symbiotic relationship. The man got the let's call it the social status of showing everyone else, look at this beautiful woman that I have on my arm, even though, again, she didn't offer much of substance other than looking good. If you want to see an example of this, get on the internet. You'll see plenty of men walking around with women who may not have much to offer intellectually or conversationally, but they have a lot to offer physically, and they make no, they're not hesitant to show you what they're offering you physically. Again, there are many examples of this. I'm not going to say anybody's names. I don't want to diss anybody's wife right now, at least not today. I'm not going to diss anybody's wife, but you can name some yourself. And what the woman was getting in a relationship was she was being financially taken care of and cared for by a man who she otherwise may not have been that physically attracted to, but she was attracted to the fact that he could provide for her financially and keep her in a stable space resource-wise. So it's a symbiotic relationship. And again, we would call them trophy wives. Some of these women were happily calling themselves trophy wives, and the men were open about, yep, this woman is my wife. He might not have called her a trophy wife, but that's the way he would let's say, what's the word that I would use here? He would use her, for lack of a better term, as a trophy, meaning he wanted to make sure that you saw her every time you saw him. All right, so he was using her as a trophy. Now, attractive women who may or may not have much substance to them, as I said, they look good on the arm. This is not a new concept. What has changed is that the internet has opened a lane for more men to acquire these trophies. That's what's changed. Only thing that's changed is the internet has opened a lane for more men to acquire these trophies, and there are more women who are actively advertising themselves as these trophies. Whereas back in the day, these women were around and they weren't really advertising themselves, not the way that they could do it so openly and brazenly and easily these days. They were advertising themselves. There were matchmakers and escort services and all of those things Back in the day, those things did exist. All right, sex is one of the oldest professions in the world. One of the oldest products ever be sold was sex and sex appeal. However, it wasn't so open and so easily accessible. It existed in little shadows, and you had to know the right people and go to the right places to find it. Nowadays, all you got to do is turn your phone on, and it's right there in front of you. That's the thing that has changed. So these women look good in the arm of a man. The man is willing to invest. This is not new. What's changed is that the internet has opened a lane for more men to acquire a trophy wife and for more women to be a trophy wife, and maybe not even a wife, maybe just a trophy girl for the week or for the weekend or for the day or for a couple pictures, or maybe they'll just be partners but not actual husband and wife, whatever the situation. The internet has basically opened the lane for more of this to take place. And I believe with the way society has changed standards wise, it's become more normalized to have yourself carry yourself as if you are a trophy woman, and to be a man who goes and gets trophy women. It again, there was a small percentage of the population who would do this and partook back in the day. Now more and more people are partaking and considering it to be, you know what, why not just do this? This is not a phase for me. I'm not just going to do it for a little while. I'm just going to do this period the whole time. Because used to be a trophy wife was a woman who was was significantly younger than the man. The man would be a generation or two older than the trophy woman, and the woman may have she's been around the block a time or two, and now she was ready to settle down, and she wanted the man who she could be a trophy for because she was looking for the resources that man had. That was a normal thing. It was a normal thing, but there weren't so many people involved. Now there are more people involved. There's a wider range of women involved. There's a wider range of men involved. And it's not just a short-term thing that people get to find at the end of the game. People are getting to this at the very beginning of the game. That's the things. Those are the things that have changed. And Instagram ass models are just an extension of this phenomenon. Let's just call it that. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is why Instagram ass models exist. The third point, what social media has allowed even more, and that we touched on a little bit ago, is for women to actively, freely, and in volume advertise themselves for such arrangements. Now, again, remember what I told you, that 30 years ago, these women would make themselves available to be wives to these men. Nowadays, there are many more options besides just becoming a wife and getting a ring. Now, you can have one of these men as a sponsor of your OnlyFans. You can have one of these men as a sugar daddy. One of these men can just they can pay you a quote unquote gift fee for your time. And you can be kind of like a courtesan or an escort for these men. So there are a lot of different ways to engage now, as opposed to back in the days when it was really just one thing: be a wife. Are you going to be my wife or not? No, let's move on. You can be my wife. No, or you'll be my wife. It used to just be one option. Now you can actively, freely, and in volume advertise yourself. So what's happened is now women can crowdsource their, not even a trophy husband, they can crowdsource the men who will sponsor them as the quote unquote trophy wife, but they're not a wife to any one individual. You can start an OnlyFans account and you can have 5 guys who are all tipping you, so to speak, and giving you gifts, so to speak, of a certain amount of money. None of the 5 men knows about any of the other 4 guys, and they all feel like they're getting their money's worth based on what they're investing. So now the internet, again, it's democratized this entire process to where it doesn't have to be one-to-one anymore. It doesn't even have to be in person, and you too never have to actually meet and shake hands. But the money can still be exchanged, and everybody is still getting what they want to get. As I told you, sex is one of the oldest products to be sold amongst humankind, and selling is the oldest profession. So social media has just allowed more of it to take place. And again, women can advertise themselves for said arrangements. Whereas back in the days, it used to be that the man would approach the woman 100% and say, hey, here's what I have. And the man had to stick his neck out with the possibility of rejection. Nowadays, what happens is a woman can put herself out there and say, hey, I'm available. And men can come to her and say, oh, you're available? Okay, here's my wallet. Here's my credit card. Let's make it happen. What do you have? I have gotten over the last, let's see, it's 2025, over the last 10 years, I'll tell you, I have received direct messages from women living in, mostly it's been women living in Eastern European countries, sometimes in Central and South American countries. These are real people asking me if I happen to be looking for a girlfriend or a wife. They don't say that maybe in the first message. there'll be a few messages. They might follow me for a while and respond to a couple of my posts, and they'll start engaging some light back and forth conversation. And I will engage and try to find out who they are and know what the hell they want, because they don't just DM you for no reason. Eventually, they get to the point, and it's usually from a woman outside of the United States. And they will ask me, "Are you looking for a girlfriend? Are you looking for a wife?" I have people say this to me, and what they're looking for is not. They're not coming looking for Dre Baldwin. It's not that they listened to my show and said, "Oh man, Dre's such a great internet lawyer. I got to have him." It's not that. What they do is they go looking around for men who appear to have a certain level of status, men who appear to have a certain level of resources, and then they make themselves available to that man by virtue of their physical beauty. And these women who I'm referring to, these are good-looking women. These are women who you wouldn't feel bad if you were walking into a room with them on your arm. All right, these women they know what they have, and they're using it to get what they want to get. And they have a lot of it. All right, trust me. And there are a lot of them. And if you've been on Instagram, you've seen the women maybe in your Explore tab. These are the women who go looking. They go hunting. They're hunting. They're either hunting for you to come to them, or they will go directly to you, depending on their style or what approach that they want to take. And these women are playing a long game that affects their life. Again, they're not just looking for an ego boost through vanity metrics. And when you see these Instagram ass models, don't think they're just doing this because they want to get some likes on the post. No, this is a business model for them. Some of them, it's a life plan for them. So give it more credit. Give it a little bit more credit than maybe what you've been giving it up to this point. That doesn't mean you have to like it, but I want you to understand there's a bigger game being played. Moving on to point number 4. Today's topic, once again, is the Instagram ass model, why they exist. Let me tell you a story, a more full story. So a few years ago, I'm living in a certain building here in Miami, and there's a guy who lived in a building, and I will say he was a black guy. I'll go as far as to say that. And this guy was kind of a dork. I would see him every now and then. I never had a conversation with him, but I would see him every now and then in the building. Now, apparently, this guy had some financial resources. The reason I believe that he had financial resources is because even though I saw him as a dork, I just saw the way he carried himself, and I was just reading his energy. I looked at the way he dressed, I looked at the way he carried himself, and I looked at his energy when I would come across him and see him and say hello and stuff like that. This guy's a dork. This guy has not been. He hasn't had the life experiences that I've had. I could just tell the way he was carrying himself. But I figured that he probably had some financial resources for one specific reason. Not just because of where he lives, but because he had this flashy sports car that he would drive, and he would often, I think he would park it with valet. I think valet would valet his car, and I would often see him with the car sitting out in the valet area, and he would leave the car out there to make sure people saw it, and he would be standing near the car and talking to people near the car, and it seemed as if he was doing it on purpose. It just appeared that way. And again, this is just a sixth sense that I have for these type of things. It seemed like he was showing off the car. And it was in this gaudy color, and I could tell that this guy was showing off the vehicle. So anyway, I just told you what kind of guy. I told you this guy was a dork. Now, this is the kind of guy that, again, just reading off his energy and knowing the life experience that I've had myself, this is the kind of guy who could never walk up to a woman who you would call a 9 or a 10. He would never walk up to a woman like that in real life and actually try to have a conversation with them. He did not seem like that type of dude. All right, just again, by reading his energy. I don't think he would ever even try. But here's what happened. One day, I'm sitting out near the pool deck of my building, and I see him across, because I was sitting at the pool deck just using my laptop. This is before I was wearing a suit, so I could sit outside where it was hot and be good all day. And I see him across the pool. He's sitting in one of the pool chairs, and he has a girl with him. And I'm looking at the girl that he has with him, and this girl was a 9 or a 10. This girl was like a 9.5. That's the kind of girl that he had with him. And I'm looking like, and when I first saw it, I'm like, all right, how did that happen? Because I know this guy would not approach a girl like that. Again, just off of what I know, my life experience. And he had this woman with him. I saw her at the pool deck and with him that day. And then several days later, I would see her sometimes come to the pool without him. She would come by herself. And when she would come to the pool deck by herself, I would still be sitting in my same spot, and she would notice me. And eventually we struck up a conversation. We're having a conversation, and she told me where she was from. It was an Eastern European country. I will go that far as to say that. And she would refer to that guy as her boyfriend. That's what she was calling him, my boyfriend. I could tell by the way she was talking and the things that she was saying. First of all, her English was not super fluent. And her calling that guy her boyfriend, the way that she was saying it just something just didn't click. Somebody says something and it just doesn't click. What they said on the surface sounds logical enough, but something just didn't click. And what I came to find out, because I would sit down at this pool deck every day and work in the same spot around the same times every day. And she would come down to the pool almost every day at similar times, and she would just lay out in the sun in her thong two piece and all that, lay out in the sun and all these things. And of course, you would notice this girl. This girl was a 9.5 out of 10, and she's calling this guy, this dorky guy, her boyfriend. And what I came to find out over time, as I kept seeing her day after day, and she was paying more attention to me than she should have been, being that she had a boyfriend who lived in the damn building and he was black and I'm black, and ain't that many black guys walking around Miami, at least not this part. Is enough of us, but it ain't that many. So if she got a black guy who's our boyfriend and I'm a black guy and your boyfriend lives in the same building as me, you are kind of talking to me a little bit too much for that to be your boyfriend. So something just didn't click. I came to find out she was sizing me up to be her next boyfriend. Now, what do I mean by this? Not that she was comparing her current guy to me and saying, well, this guy, Dre, is better than my guy, so I'm going to dump my guy and get with him. No, that's not the arrangement. That's not what it is. Remember what I told you, this guy was a dork. This guy was on an arrangement with this girl. He had put some money on the table to sponsor her to be there in America and serve as his girlfriend for a certain period of time. And she understood, this was her hustle. She understood she only had a certain amount of time before she needed to find another sponsor. Otherwise, she would have had to go back home to that Eastern European country that she was from. And she was looking at me like, all right, I'm with this current guy, but when my time is up with the current guy, well, shit, maybe I can replace him with this guy. So I'm going to go from him being my boyfriend to this dude being my boyfriend. Here's what's crazy. Had I gone for it, she would have been fine with it. And the dude, he would have been fine with it too. Like, yo, I already had her. I had her for the last 3 months. Or you got her this month. Whatever. That's the deal. All right. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't on some, I went and earned this girl the normal way. He put his money down. He got the time that he paid for it, and that'd be it. That was the game. I'm telling you all this to help you all understand this is the way the game works. So when you see Instagram ass models, it's a lot deeper than what you think it is. And I understood why the man was playing the game. As I already explained to you, the man, he wouldn't end up with a girl like that. Even with his nice car, his personality would have killed it. But with the money, he's able to get a girl like that who would just do whatever he says for the right amount of money. That's the game. Moving on to point number 5. Last point. Today's topic, once again, is why Instagram ass models exist. Let me tell you what all this means. All right, this is what I want you all to understand about everything that I've explained to you here in this episode. Attractive women who are willing to leverage their physical assets on the internet, and I'm not telling you you should do this, but women who are willing to do it, willing and able to do it, they can fish for men and find men who are willing and able to financially support them in exchange for their looks. Again, this is not a new phenomenon. There's just new methods for doing it. Instagram ass modeling is one of the newer methods for doing this. Over the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years, it's become much more prevalent. Now you see many women jumping into this pool. It's always been a thing for women to use their physical assets to find men who will financially support them in exchange for those assets. But now it's becoming more mainstream. It used to be more in the shadows. Now it's more mainstream. Now everyday women are doing this, and they're proud of it. Again, this didn't used to be. It didn't used to be like that. And I'm not saying every woman should jump into this. I don't want my wife, daughter, mom, sister doing any of these things. But I understand the game. At the same time, I understand the game. And I'm also a heterosexual man. So you understand my position. When I see these things, I know this as well, because I am who I am. And other men who are listening to this, you understand what I'm saying. Even if you are in a committed relationship, you still understand that they're out there and you know exactly where they are. And you know where to look if you want to look for something. Now, everybody gets my point. And the women, you get my point as well. This is not a new phenomenon. Again, it's just much easier to get involved on the buyer side or the seller side than it has ever been. Remember, I had a coaching client up in New York. He was a real estate guy. And he would have clients who were looking to buy houses and clients looking to sell houses. So when I say that buyer and seller side, it reminds me of him, because he would always say that. He would say the buy side and the sell side. The buy side and the sell side. And he liked to be on the sell side. And the whole point is, if you're an average male, whatever you consider to be average, you have fewer options in the marketplace these days than you have had in the past. Why you have fewer options? Because many more women, and here's the thing with women, is that no matter what level you rate a woman at, from a 1 to a 10, there is a man out there who would be sexually interested in that woman. But men, we don't get rated based on our looks. A woman can rate a man based on looks, but women don't choose men based on looks. Women choose men based on resources. Men choose women based on looks. which means there is always a man out there who'll be interested in some woman, regardless of where you rank her on the 1 to 10 scale. But if you're a man and you are average or somewhere around average, you may not have nearly as many options as a woman has. If you're a 4 based on your resources, a woman who's a 4 based on her looks has more options as a 4 than you had. She has more options as a female 4 than you have as a male 4. That's the reality. That's the situation. Your options have dwindled. They've gotten smaller. It's not that you have no options, but you don't have as many. That's the point. And because of this, because you have fewer options, this is not going away. This phenomenon is not changing in your favor if you remain in the position that you are currently in. Women will have more and more options simply because there are more and more men who are looking for a woman, and they're looking for a shortcut to where they don't have to earn it through their substance. They can just use their resources if they have them. And a man with resources can often get 2, 3, 4, 10 women if he wants to, and use his resources as he wishes with each one. And they're okay with the arrangement. I just gave you an example. The woman had her quote unquote boyfriend. She was looking to replace him with me. As soon as that arrangement was up, I was going to be next in line. She was completely okay with this. This was the game that she was playing. And that man, as soon as that girlfriend left, he can go get himself another girlfriend if he wanted to. That's the deal. So women will have more and more options. Average men will have less and less. Even an average woman will have more options because there's always a market for something with men. The solution for you, if you are a man, because there is a solution, here's the good news, is don't be average. You consider yourself average now and you want to have more options in the sexual marketplace, don't be average. If you're average, your options will be limited. That's just what it is. I'm sorry nobody told you this before. Now I'm telling you. All that said, let's recap today's class, which is why Instagram ass models exist. This one doesn't need background. Number 1 is not just to get likes, engagement, and attention. Some of you may think that, but no, that is not the game. Number 2, when I was a kid, men were adored and respected by their wives just for working average jobs, making an average salary, and generally taking care of home. That was the woman's expectation. She wasn't looking for anything more than that. There are women who are still like this, but there are more and more women dipping into this pool of, wait a minute, I can get a whole lot more if I just show off my body. I can find men who will financially give me what I want in exchange for me using my looks, at least while I have those looks available, because the looks fade. Whereas the other good news for men that I didn't say is that men, you tend to get better and better because you're judged by your resources. And usually men get better with resources as we get older, whereas women are judged by their looks, and looks tend to fade as they get older. So we're kind of going in opposite directions. Number 3, but social media has allowed even more for women to actively, freely, and in volume advertise themselves as available for such arrangements. See, these arrangements always existed, but now it's easier to advertise and they're easier to find. Number 4, I told you stories. Dork guy in my building had a big gaudy sports car that he would show off. He's the kind of guy who could not approach any woman of any level of attractiveness and have a conversation. I could just tell by his energy. But one day I saw him with a girl who was like a 9.5. I'm like, how did he get that girl? Found out it was a financial arrangement. He was her quote unquote boyfriend, and she was sizing me up to be the next boyfriend as soon as that arrangement ran out. And number 5, what all this means is attractive women can now leverage social media, which is available to everybody, to show off their physical assets, and they can fish for men who are willing and able to financially support them in exchange for those looks. And men can do the exact same thing to find women who they can financially support based on their finances, not based on who they are as a man or their looks or anything else. Doesn't even matter. Again, you've seen men with trophy wives before. You're like, how did that man get that girl? But I just explained to you. All right, that's the game. Now it's wide open. That game has always existed. Now it's wide open. That's what's changed. All that said, folks, workonyourgameuniversity.com. You want to be not average. You want to take yourself to the highest level to where you have the resources to do what you want to do and call your own shots in any space. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Secure me as your coach. Let's take it to the next level. Work on your game. Dre, all